Big 12 Radio, this is Big 12 Today. Along with James Westling, I am Ari Tepkin. So please be joined right now by Greg Wrubell, the voice of BYU, as BYU gears up for a Big 12 championship appearance against Texas Tech on Saturday at AT&T Stadium. And, I mean, it's pretty remarkable, Greg, to consider that when this season started, or right even before the season started, to think that BYU would end up here. Right? We knew this team would be good, but just the uncertainty at quarterback, it's just wild to think how crazy of a season it's been, considering, again, that this team lost its starting quarterback from last year right before the season started.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, you could argue that BYU is still, kind of paying the price for that preseason ranking. When Jake Retzloff left, everyone just thought, well, there goes BYU, and they dropped BYU out of a potential top 25. They would have been probably 13, 14 to start the season. They had so much room to make up, and I think there is an actual, there's data that shows that the teams that were ranked are kind of more or less where you'd expect them to be at this point, and unranked BYU had too much room to have to move to get to a position where they could argue for anything higher at this point. So I think there was some bias in rankings that BYU took a long time to overcover, and there's data on this too. BYU is perennially, the most underranked team in the country. They most often end up in the top 25 when they didn't start in the top 25. And so for BYU, I think BYU deserves actually extra credit for losing Jake Retzloff and doing what they've done. To take a true freshman quarterback and get an 11-1 season in a power conference. The Sean Alexander list for Freshman of the Year award came out last night, and Bear's not on that. Bear Bachmeier is a true freshman. Some of these other guys already had multiple college games on their resume. We're talking about a kid that was in high school last year, steps in at a P4 level, helps his team to an 11-1 season with 3,000 yards of total. I mean, Bear's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
He should be a much bigger story. BYU should be a much bigger story. And that BYU story has been tamped down and tamped down and tamped down, and they are dismissed. And unfortunately, it all comes down to 26-0. And when I say that was the score of the Texas Tech BYU game in the fourth quarter. And I think the committee watched that game, and on that day in early November, they saw 26-0 and said, okay, that's BYU. And they haven't considered anything else before or since. It's unfair. It's not right. The data doesn't back them up. It was a bad day against a really good team. All right, we're talking about the team, the committee voted Texas Tech number 4. Okay, that's an elite football team on its home field. Their smallest victory margin all year was the BYU game. Their only game with under 30 points all year was the BYU game. Their fewest yards in a win all year was the BYU game. BYU got beat, all right, and 26-0 was not great. Finished 29-7. But let's remember that was a tough test on a team's home field, an elite football team. It's funny, I go back and I think about the first 2 series Texas Tech had in that game. 7 plays, minus 29 yards. The BYU defense came to play, all right? Texas Tech did nothing in its first 2 series. And BYU's first 2 chances for special teams plays were a shank punt and a fumbled punt return. Those 2 plays helped flip things pretty early, got Texas Tech rolling, and we saw what happened. But that said, it's 13-0 at halftime. It's a ball game. Had the offense and the special teams had any kind of game like the defense had that day, I think we're talking about a different deal. Point being, the committee's using that one data point, that one game, that one bad showing by the offense and special teams to say that's a football team, and that's not the football team. There's 12 games to go on. There are ranked wins. There are road wins. There are comeback wins. There's a great freshman story. There's an awesome head coach. There's a lot to love about BYU. And for some reason, everybody's flipped the switch to off on BYU in the committee and the national media.
And just real quickly, a very close comp would be last year's Indiana team that lost one game to
got smoked
38-15. It's almost the exact same resume, except BYU probably has a better win. There was no Utah win on Indiana's schedule last year.
It's a 23-point loss. It's a 22-point loss. And again, it's to a team you say is elite.
Right.
All right. What's the standard we're setting here? SMU last year. All right. They went to their title game, lost it, ended up 11-2. By the way, their other loss that year besides Clemson was BYU.
BYU.
BYU never got credit for the SMU win last year. So SMU went in, lost their title game, ended up joining Clemson in the college football playoff. The only difference being Clemson, I think, was an 8 going in, and BYU's an 11. Those 3 spots make all the difference. But unfortunately for BYU, the 3 spots this year are occupied by 2 lost teams, and BYU's a 1-loss team. Just even in the most simple manner of observation, you can't put 3 2-loss teams in front of a 1-loss team that has played the schedule with the strength of record of BYU. There's just so much wrong with the rankings. But the committee will never admit they're wrong. They don't want to move anybody at this point. Yes, they bumped Alabama to give themselves a bit of a buffer, but they don't want to pull teams back by just going, oh, you know what? We really should have looked closer at BYU's resume. That's kind of our bad. They don't do that.
Completely agree. And BYU has a better win-loss record. They have a better strength of record. They have a better strength of schedule. They have more top 25 wins than all the other teams that have 2 losses. So of the 3 teams that you just noted there, like, what's your biggest beef? Who do you think BYU, no-brainer, should be in front of that somehow, some way is still ranked higher?
Notre Dame.
Yep.
I mean, you saw the conference's graphic last night, right? I mean, that's pretty plain to see where BYU should be in comparison to Notre Dame. Alabama has a loss so much worse than anything on BYU's resume. The Florida State game, by the way, Florida State lost to Stanford, who BYU smoked. We can pick holes in anybody in front of BYU and do it with some good data to back it up. There's no doubt about that. I just don't know what they're looking at besides the Texas Tech game. And I really do. But guys, I admit, I concede 26-0 was not a good look. If that game finishes, 27-20, 31-24, maybe we don't have this discussion. If that was a ball game through 4 quarters, the committee probably gives BYU a fairer shake at this point. It's just really unfortunate. And this is on BYU, right? This is on them. On that day, they were not right in all 3 phases of the game. Okay, and because of that, they're paying the price for it. They have to acknowledge it. They do acknowledge it. They weren't in the game when they needed to be. If they were in the game, I'd like to think the committee would have given BYU a fair shake, but it was so stark that day. It looked so bad that day that they, I think, made their decision. That's who we think BYU is. It was a weird day, guys. BYU has 22 takeaways on the year. They have multiple takeaways in 8 of their 11 games. They have at least 1 takeaway in 11 of 12 games. The one game where they don't get a takeaway, it's the Texas Tech game. They had 2 picks that they should have had, didn't get. It was a weird game that way. So they were -3 in the margin against one of the best turnover margin teams in the country. They were -18 yards in average starting field position. You can't win that game. Those 2 numbers alone, -3 in the margin and -18 in average starting field position, you're dead. And they were dead that day. But it was such an outlier. The areas in which they've been strong all year, they weren't strong that day. Give a lot of credit to Texas Tech. I mean, again, elite football team. You go through their stat rankings. Where are they weak? Nowhere. There is not a weakness on this Texas Tech team. And now BYU is being asked to beat this team or risk being on the outside looking in on the college football playoff. Even if they were to lose to Texas Tech, those are 2 losses to one of the best football teams in the country. And there's not enough left on the BYU resume to say that's a good football team. Clearly, I disagree. But the committee rules the day, and you see where BYU is at number 11. The equally unconscionable thing, guys, to me, is how the national media, ESPN notably, is just ignoring BYU to the extent where they will show 10, 12, and 13 on the screen and leave out 11.
Yep.
It's that blatant and that obvious. I don't get it.
So, Greg, let's say Saturday's close. Let's say it is a 27-20 game in the 4th quarter. If BYU doesn't win outright, let's say it's close and the style points are there for BYU and Alabama loses their conference championship game. Do you think that's enough to move the needle?
I will hope, beyond hope, that it is, right? And maybe the contrast will be good. Maybe the committee will go, maybe there's more to BYU than we thought. This looks better than we saw before. This Bachmeier kid's a player. This defense that is almost as good as Texas. They may have that feeling. That'd be my hope. The fact that you've got teams that won't be playing this weekend, that they can't make a point this weekend. BYU's got this. I mean, is there a more motivated team in America than BYU this weekend? There can't be, right? I mean, everything is on the line for BYU. They know. that everybody's against them at this point. It would certainly benefit the Big 12 that BYU gets 2 teams in, but Texas Tech's not lying down for anybody. They're playing for a bye. They're motivated too, but BYU's got all these motivational elements going for them. And I think something we should think about too, guys, is Texas Tech can go into this game saying, we do what we do. It was good enough to beat BYU 29-7 last time. It should be good enough to beat BYU again this time. We are who we are. We're healthy. Let's just go play Texas Tech football, and that should be enough. BYU goes into it going, we can't just do what we did last time. Something's got to change. Something's got to be better. Something's got to be different. And so I think that could help, too, from a tactical standpoint. BYU knowing it's got to make some adjustments. L.J. Martin's going to be healthier. That was his first game back off the Iowa State injury. He wasn't right that day. In fact, his first run was 12 yards. He took a pop at the end of that. I think he got dinged at the wrong place on his body after that 12-yard hit. I don't think he was the same the rest of the way. He's much better now. I mean, LJ's had an amazing season. I mean, he's one of the best offensive players in the conference. He's better now than he was on that day. Bear Bachmeier conceded that was kind of his first rough day of the year, and he's been better since that day. I think there's a lot of reasons to think that BYU can show better, and it is weird that all these chances for early special teams plays they made mistakes on. A shank punt, a fumbled punt return, taking a kickoff out of the end zone, missing a field goal, all these things that would have kept you in the game went the other way when they hadn't been playing that way. And so I kind of want to say it's a mulligan, and sometimes your second swing's just better than that first swing. And that'll be the hope for BYU on Saturday.
Yeah, well said, Greg, and agree with everything you said there. I mean, it was very uncharacteristic. I mean, this is a very good team from a special teams perspective, and they were dreadful on special teams. And this is a very good team in terms of not turning the football over, and they were -3. Do you think they were played scared in that game?
I don't know. There's always that cliche about the game being too big, and I don't know. I do know that was a great home field advantage that day for Texas Tech. And Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator, told me straight up after, we made way too many pre-snap mistakes because of noise. He thought the noise did impact his team, and it was probably the best environment they'd played in to that point of the season. This isn't going to be a home game for Texas Tech. That's also a difference here. Granted, both teams had to deal with the wild wind, but that was a 20 to 30 mile per hour wind all day, and it just hurt BYU more than it hurt Texas Tech. Straight up, BYU didn't handle it as well as Texas Tech. This will not be a weather affected game. It will not be a crowd affected game. This is a sold out. By the way, how great is it sold out midweek? And this, the BYU crowd's going to show up. You guys know. I mean, you take BYU to Provo, you're still going to find a fan base that will follow the Cougars. And so the Cougars are going to draw really well from Texas and surrounding areas. And this is going to be a great football game environment. I'm so looking forward to getting back into the building on Saturday. It'll be my third game I think I've called there. I called the Oklahoma game in 2009 when the Sooners were ranked number 3 and BYU beat them to start the season. And then 2011, first year of independence, they played TCU in a neutral field game there as well. And so looking really forward to getting back in. It's going to be outstanding. I hope at the end of the day, we're talking about 2 Big 12 teams going to the playoff. Of course, that means that BYU is taking care of business. But what a challenge. I mean, Texas Tech is so good. You look for holes you can poke. You really can't. The only thing you can hope, if you're BYU, in terms of their weaknesses coming to the forefront, they get penalized a lot. Penalties can hurt you in big game situations. They weren't as penalized against BYU. I think they had 6 for 50, which you can get over. And the fact they do take a few TFLs and Morton's gotten sacked a few times. And I'd argue that BYU actually has a more efficient offense on the year than Texas Tech. But that Texas Tech defense, even though BYU's defense is really good, Texas's Tech defense is elite. Arguably the best in the country. And you can use a lot of data to back that up right now. So, again, good luck finding areas you can exploit because there are so few for the Red Raiders.
Yeah, well said. Greg, before we let you go, what's going on with BYU basketball?
Yeah, another win last night. Cal Baptist. People got Cal Baptist. They were 7-1. A net of 72 coming in. A Ken Palma 128. So pretty good basketball team. They won in Corvallis on the weekend. Led Colorado 23-9 early on Monday, and BYU just lit them up last night. I mean, it was never a ball game. So, and the Cougs are playing without Dawson Baker out for the year, without Nate Pickens out for the year. Dominique Diomande was sick and didn't play last night. So they were shorthanded and just took care of business against Cal Baptist. 30-ish point win. A.J. DeBonsa was outstanding. 16 points in the first half. Keba Keita had double figures in the first half. There's a big three on this team: DeBonsa, Saunders, and Rob Wright. But Keba is really emerging as a force inside. Kennard Davis Jr., they call him Moo. Moo was big. All 5 BYU starters, double figures last night. This is a really good starting 5. Last year's team was kind of like they had 2 starting 5s. They had like a group of 5 off the bench and a group of 5 they would start. This year's team is different. The depth isn't there, but the quality of that starting 5 high right now, and that big 3 is as good as any top trio in the country. They scored 70 between the 3 of them in the win over Dayton on Friday, and they're averaging between 55 and 60 points a game anyway on a nightly basis. It's a fun team to watch, and AJ, I mean, he's a pro. I mean, he makes pro shots, and he did last night over and over again. Fun night at the Delta Center. It'll be good to get back at the Marriott Center. We've had only 2 home games all year. We're on a run of 6 consecutive neutral court games right now. The 6th of 6 is next Tuesday at Madison Square Garden against Clemson. Another big name, big game. Then we'll come back and get back into Provo. But sorry, long answer to your short question.
No.
Basketball's been fun. They're 7-1. It's been a blast.
Great stuff as always from Greg Wrubell, voice of BYU. And let me just add real quick. I appreciate your effort in trying to figure out why the committee has BYU ranked where they do. I think it's fairly simple. Notre Dame is going to get in every year where they have 2 losses or less. It's just, I mean, every conference has representation, and then Notre Dame has its own representation. It's a joke. It's egregious, but they're going to get in every year. So it's not, we could sit here and say it's because of the Texas Tech loss, but it's nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with Notre Dame, and it's sad, and it makes no sense, but that's what it is.
Yeah. And the committee chair, in the talking points about Notre Dame the other day, said, well, they've won 10 straight. Well, they should win 10 straight games. With that schedule, they should be winning the games they're winning. But they lost their first 2. Then they got into games they can win, and they've won them, right? BYU had a much tougher road to go. You're playing in a conference. Stakes are much higher on a week-to-week basis. Notre Dame did what it should do, quite frankly.
Yes.
But I also think BYU did what it should do. I mean, if you're a power conference team with 1 loss, and your only loss is to a top 4 team on the road, you're still a really good football team. And to hold you behind 3 2-loss teams is kind of egregious. And a lot will have to happen to change the committee's minds, because they don't look like the kind of group to admit that they're wrong.
Yeah, no, you're right. And look, I mean, I said it when they were 0-2. When Notre Dame was 0-2, I said they're going to run the table from here on out and get to the playoff. And it just sucks that it's coming right now at the expense of BYU. And this idea of like, well, they just have to go and win it. It's like, well, I mean, they've won 11 of the 12 games they played. They've won, 22 of 23, 25?
22 of 25, 22 and 3 in the last 2 years, yeah. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable.
You're not talking about some G6 scrub trying to make a case here to play with the big boys. They are one of the big boys,
right?
And they're playing like it. And I thought the credit would be there. It's so funny, in all the years of Mountain West and independence, the thought was, well, if they ever got into a power conference, they won't have to deal with this again. Well, they're dealing with this again.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, totally right. Greg, can't wait to see you in Dallas, in Arlington. Appreciate your time as always, and go get them on Saturday. Should be a fun game.
All right, James, always a pleasure. Producer Will, appreciate you, and we'll do it again soon. Thanks, guys.